Many years ago, in a loud market that woke up with voices that filled it, there was a small food stall that looked ordinary until you really paid attention to it. If you stood there long enough, you would notice that the pots never seemed to finish, and the customers never seemed to learn. That food place belonged to Mama Teresa. Now, Mama Teresa was a Catholic woman, a serious-looking one, the kind who tied her wrapper properly, covered her hair on Sundays, and could kneel for a long time without shifting her weight. However, inside the market, she was known for something else entirely, something that had nothing to do with the rosary or novena, and everything to do with survival. Her full name was Teresa Ndamoko, but nobody in that market had the time or patience for long names. So they called her Mama Teresa, sometimes respectfully, and sometimes they said it with a tone that suggested they knew more than they were saying. Her stall stood between a pepper seller who shouted as if she was competing with thunder and a fish seller whose smell arrived before she did. Yet, Mama Teresa's own corner had its own identity. There was always a pot on the fire, always steam rising like a sacrifice, and always customers sitting on wooden benches. Meanwhile, at home, life was not arranged like her pots. Her husband, Timothy, was a gentle man who believed in peace even when peace was avoiding him. He walked where he could, earned what he could, and spoke when necessary, which meant he spent most of his time watching Mama Teresa run the house like a general who had no choice but to win every day. They had children who understood hunger without anyone needing to explain it to them. Children who could look at a pot and calculate whether it would reach them or not. And in that kind of home, ideas about honesty were rare because survival was always standing in front like a stubborn visitor who refused to leave. Now, Mama Teresa had her own way of explaining life. If you asked her how she managed to feed so many customers with one pot of stew, she would not answer directly. She would look at you, adjust a wrapper, and say something that sounded like wisdom but worked like strategy. "My sister," she would say, "life is like soup. If you know how to turn it, it will turn for you." Well, what she meant was simple, even if she did not say it plainly. When she cooked stew, she did not cook it alone. Water always attended the meeting, but not too much to cause suspicion or too little to be useless, just enough to stretch the pot in a way that made the stew act like it had grown. Well, the rice also had its own miracle. It could increase in quantity without asking permission from anybody. The meat was also present, yes, but in a way that made it look like it was only passing through rather than staying. Of course, customers complained about her food. After all, the market was not a place where people kept quiet when their money felt insulted. One afternoon, a man dropped his spoon and stared into his plate as if the food had offended him personally. "Mama Teresa, is this meat or memory?" The people around laughed, but Mama Teresa did not laugh. She stepped forward slowly, wiped her hand on her wrapper, and looked into his plate as if she too was searching for the meat. Then she, laughter, said, "My brother, if you want meat that will greet you properly, go and marry a cow. This one is for support." The laughter doubled, and even the man who complained found himself smiling in spite of his frustration because that was how Mama Teresa controlled her environment. She did not argue. She just redirected. At home, Timothy sometimes tried to speak about it in a careful tone because he knew he was entering a place where his voice might not be welcome. One evening, as they sat outside together, he said, "Teresa, do you think it is right?" Mama Teresa did not look at him immediately. She was counting her money. Finally, she asked, "What is right? This way of cooking, is it good?" Timothy asked, "Sometimes I wonder." Immediately, she cut him off with finality. "Timothy, will doing what is right put food on this table?" He did not answer. She continued, now looking at him directly. "When customers come, they want cheap food. When I give them cheap food, they complain. If I give them correct food, they will run. So tell me, which one is right?" Timothy sighed deeply, because he did not have the kind of answer that could survive that kind of question. That was how the matter rested there, postponed like many things in their home. Then Lent came. The season of Lent started with Ash Wednesday, and Mama Teresa went to church that morning because it was what she had always done. She dressed well, covered her head, laughter, held her rosary, and walked seriously like a woman who respected the structure of her faith. Even when she worked around its details in her daily life, inside the church, the atmosphere was different from the market. It was calm, controlled, and quiet, so quiet that it made people remember things they had been avoiding. As Mama Teresa sat there waiting to go and receive ash on her forehead, she was already thinking about the pot she left at home and the customers who would soon begin their usual complaints. Then the priest began to speak. At first, she listened casually. The words passed, advice flowed, and she nodded her head. Nothing entered deeply until one sentence arrived. The priest said, "Do not fast only from food. Fast from dishonesty." That statement was not loud or dramatic. Yet it landed. Mama Teresa adjusted her sitting position. For a brief moment, the picture of the market entered her mind. Her clear's throat pots, her water, her calculations, and her clever stretching of things that refused to stretch naturally. She tried to push it aside and said, everybody is managing now. But the sentence refused to leave her head. After the Mass, as she walked back home, she was quieter than usual. Even when Timothy greeted her, she only nodded. He noticed it, but did not ask because he had learned that some silences were better left alone until they chose to speak. That evening, she stood in her kitchen staring at the pot as if it was waiting for her decision. The fire was ready, the ingredients were arranged, and the water, of course, sat nearby, innocent in appearance, but guilty in purpose. She picked up the cup, then paused. She looked at it, then looked at the pot of stew. Her hand did not move immediately. It stayed there, suspended. Timothy entered quietly and leaned on the wall, watching her. "You have not started cooking," he said. Mama Teresa did not startle. She just replied, "I am thinking." He raised his eyebrows slightly. "About food?" She nodded slowly. Then, almost as if she was speaking to herself more than to him, she said, "For this Lenten season, I will not cheat." Timothy blinked, then laughed, not because it was funny, but because it sounded impossible. "You want us to fast together?" he asked. Mama Teresa did not laugh. She lowered the cup of water and placed it back beside the wall. "I said what I said," she replied. Timothy stopped laughing. He looked at her again, this time carefully, trying to see whether she was serious. "You mean you will not water down the stew?" he asked. She nodded. "No water." He shook his head slowly and leaned back. "Then we should start praying for our stomachs now," he muttered. Mama Teresa ignored him. She faced the pot fully now and began to cook, measuring everything as it should be measured, not as it had always been managed. The process felt strange, as if she were writing with a strange hand. Clear's throat, as expected, the stew looked different. The quantity reduced, the smell remained, but the volume had lost its usual confidence. When she finished and opened the pot, she stepped back slightly and sighed because for the first time, her food looked honest and small. She stared at it and shook her head. "So this is how it is supposed to be." Behind her, Timothy peeped into the pot and let out a low whistle. "Oh, this one cannot survive the market." So Mama Teresa did not answer. She was already thinking about how she would cope in the very place that had trained her to survive without asking too many moral questions. The next morning came with its usual noise. But to Mama Teresa, everything felt different. It felt as if the market had been told about her decision before she arrived and was now ready to respond. She arranged her food carefully, this time without the tricks that had always stood behind her success. When she finished setting up, she looked at the pot again with a mixture of pride and fear, because what she had made was correct, but dangerously honest, and honesty in that market did not always turn into profit. The first customer arrived. This was a regular man who never greeted her properly, but always complained properly. He sat down confidently and ordered, "Mama Teresa, give me rice." She served him rice, but he looked at the plate. Then he looked at her. Then he looked at the plate again, as if expecting it to grow out of respect for their long relationship. "What is this?" he asked. "That is food," Mama Teresa replied calmly. The man frowned. "It is small." Mama Teresa nodded tightly. "It is correct." The man stared at her for a moment, unsure whether she was joking. but her face gave him no help. "So, you have started all this church thing," he said. "You want to kill customers with holiness?" The people nearby laughed. But Mama Teresa did not react. She simply said, "If you want more, you can pay for more." The man shook his head, muttered something about suffering, and began to eat. But even his chewing carried complaints. More customers came that morning, and more reactions followed. One woman lifted her plate, and Clear's throat called out loudly, "Mama Teresa, did your pot fight with you this morning?" Another customer asked, "Or maybe the food is doing fasting." The news spread quickly, and by midday, Mama Teresa could already see the difference. Her food was reducing at a faster rate, not because sales had increased, but because the quantity had decreased. Worse still, the money coming in did not match the effort going out. The reality tasted very bitter. Mama Saad, who had been watching from her own stall with great interest, finally spoke. "Sorry, Teresa," she said with a smile that carried mischief. "This your new style? Is it permanent or temporary madness?" Mama Teresa looked at her briefly. "It is Lent." Mama Saad laughed loudly. "If Lent can cook food, continue then. We will be here when you come back to your senses." The other women joined in, each adding their own comments that sounded like advice but carried ridicule inside them. "Customers are not praying people," one of the women said. "They are eating people." "God understands business," another one added. "Even the priest does these things." Mama Teresa listened to all of it without replying. But inside her, pressure was building slowly. By evening, the difference was clear. The money she counted did not make any impact. It sat in her hand like something that was trying to be useful, but did not have enough strength to succeed. At home, Timothy watched her quietly as she arranged the notes. He shook his head and said, "This one is not encouraging."
"No."
Mama Teresa did not look up. She muttered, "It is just the beginning." Timothy nodded slowly, even though his face showed that he did not believe in beginnings that started with reduction. The children noticed too. One of them peeped into the pot and frowned. "Mommy, why is the food finishing quickly these days?" the child asked. Mama Teresa paused, then replied, "Because it is no longer pretending." The child did not understand, but nodded anyway. That night, as she stood again in the kitchen preparing for the next day, the water was there, waiting as it always had, existing as an option that had solved many problems in the past. She picked up the cup, and this time her hand did not move immediately. She looked at the pot. She looked at the water. Her mind began to calculate without asking for permission. "If I adjust a little, nobody will know. I will make gain," she thought. "If I lose too much, how will we eat? If God understands, then maybe this is not necessary." The thoughts came one after another, reasonable, logical, and persuasive. Each one presented itself as wisdom rather than compromise. Behind her, Timothy's voice came. "You are thinking again," he said. She nodded. "Yes." He stepped closer. "About what?" She looked at the water, then back at the pot. "Dishonesty. It is really expensive." Timothy nodded. "I told you." She exhaled deeply, then slowly poured the water back into the bucket. "Let it be expensive," she said. Unfortunately, the next few days did not improve. If anything, they became harder. Her customers reduced further. Complaints increased, and even those who stayed began to bargain more aggressively, as if they were punishing her for refusing to play the game the way it had always been played. One afternoon, a man dropped his money on the table and said, "If you cannot cook like before, tell us. We will adjust ourselves." Mama Teresa looked at him and said, "I am cooking better than before." He laughed. "Then we are the ones who have become poor, right?" Well, that laughter did not carry joy. It carried judgment and mockery. Back at home, Timothy became quieter because he had realized that arguing would not change it. Still, one evening he could not hold it anymore. He said, "Teresa, Lent is for the soul, not for destroying business." She looked at him and asked, "Is honesty not part of the soul?" He sighed. "But must we suffer this much like this? I like honesty, but this one is too much. You can do your honesty small." Teresa did not answer immediately. Instead, she walked to the kitchen, stood in front of the pot, and rested her hand on it as if she wanted to draw strength from it. Then she said, "Sometimes what is right does not look right at the beginning." The following afternoon, when the sun was high and the market had entered that slow period when people either rested or complained, a woman came and stood near Mama Teresa's stall without speaking. She was not like the usual customers. She simply watched. Mama Teresa noticed her, but continued working because the market had taught her not to react to every silence. After a while, the woman spoke. "Give me food." Mama Teresa served her. The woman looked at the plate carefully, then began to eat slowly, not like someone who was hungry, but like someone who was observing. When she finished, she wiped her hand and nodded slightly. "This is correct," she said. Mama Teresa looked at her, surprised by the tone because it carried recognition rather than complaint. The woman brought out money and paid without bargaining. Then she said, "Keep the change." Mama Teresa blinked. That had not happened in a long time. The woman began to walk away. Then she paused and said without turning, "You are doing something difficult. Continue." Mama Teresa watched her leave, trying to understand what had just happened. And that small moment stayed with her longer than she expected. For days, Mama Teresa held on to that woman's words like a ladder, especially at the moments when the temptation to return to her old ways stood in front of her like a familiar friend offering help without judgment. However, the market did not change because one woman decided to be honest. It continued as it always had, loud and unforgiving, full of people who measured value not by intention, but by portion. Mama Saad, her rival, watched her closely now. She was no longer laughing as freely as before because something about Mama Teresa's consistency had begun to disturb her. One morning, just as Mama Teresa finished arranging her pots, the same quiet woman returned. This time she did not stand at a distance. She walked straight to the front and sat down. Then she said, "Mama Teresa, today I am not just eating. I want us to talk." Mama Teresa wiped her hands and sat opposite her. Her face was calm even though her heart had already begun to beat faster because the market had taught her that conversations that started like this rarely ended well. "My name is Mrs. Zimico," the woman said. "I manage food supply for some offices in town." Mama Teresa blinked slowly. Mrs. Zimico continued, "I have been watching you from the day your food changed." Mama Teresa felt exposed. This meant someone had been watching her struggle more closely than she had realized. "You refuse to cheat," Mrs. Zimico said, even when it was not convenient. Mama Teresa nodded slightly. "It is Lent." Mrs. Zimico smiled. "No, it is more than Lent. Many people start, but few people continue." She paused, then leaned forward slightly and said, "I have a contract. It is a daily food supply in large quantity. It comes with steady payment." Mama Teresa felt her throat tighten. "I need someone who can cook well," Mrs. Zimico continued. "But more importantly, someone who can be trusted. Can you do it?" Mama Teresa did not answer immediately. She was overwhelmed because for the first time since she started this journey, it dawned on her that honesty was not just a personal sacrifice. "It is big work," she said carefully. Mrs. Zimico nodded. "Yes, it is." Mama Teresa continued, "It will cost more and profit may not be like before." Mrs. Zimico smiled. "But it will be clean." Mama Teresa looked at her for a long moment and then said, "I will do it." The news about the deal did not stay quiet for long because the market had ears that did not belong to individuals. By afternoon, people had already begun to whisper, "Mama Teresa now has a connection. Something has opened for her. What kind of favor is this?" Mama Saad approached her later that day. "Sorry, Teresa," she said again. "What is happening?" Mama Teresa looked at her calmly and replied, "Work." Mama Saad nodded slowly, although her face showed that she was not satisfied with the simplicity of the answer. Finally, she said, "Be careful. Sometimes these big people come with big problems." Mama Teresa smiled. "Sometimes they also come with big answers." Fortunately, the contract began the following week, but it was not easy. If anything, it was harder than the market. She woke up earlier, cooked more carefully, and measured everything properly. She did not allow room for mistakes or shortcuts at all. However, there were moments when she remembered her old ways and thought of adjusting a little. One evening, as she stood in the kitchen preparing a large pot of stew, she paused again. The water was there, the quantity required was large, and the temptation returned. This time with stronger arguments. If you reduce the quality a little, nobody will notice. You will save money. You will gain more. She stood there for a moment. Then she remembered something. Well, it was not the priest's voice or Mrs. Zimiko's words. She remembered the days when her children had asked why the food was small. She remembered the shame she had felt when customers laughed. She remembered the strength it took to continue when nothing seemed to be working. And slowly, she stepped back from the pot and said no. After several weeks, the work stabilized, payments came in regularly, and things began to change for them at home. One evening, Timothy watched her as she counted money. This time the money was not small. He nodded slowly and then said, "This one is huge." Mama Teresa smiled. Yes, it is honest. Back in the market, things had changed too. Customers who had left began to return, not because the price had reduced, but because they now appreciated the quality that had remained consistent. New customers also came, and they did not argue or ask questions. Mama Saad, her rival, tried to adjust her own cooking by reducing water slightly, then increasing it again when she felt the pressure of profit, and in that inconsistency, her food lost direction. One afternoon, a customer who ate from her stall frowned and then said loudly, "This food is confusing. It tastes like you are hiding something." Everyone burst into laughter. Mama Teresa heard it from her corner and said nothing. She simply continued working. One evening, as she closed her stall, Mama Saad approached her again, this time without laughter or mockery. "Teresa, what did you do?" she asked. Mama Teresa looked at her. "Oh, so you know my name well. Anyway, I just removed water," she said. Mama Saad shook her head slowly. "It cannot be that simple." Mama Teresa smiled. "It is not simple. It is just clear." Thank you for watching the story. Kindly share your thoughts about the story with me in the comment section. What lesson did you learn from this story? If you enjoyed the story, give the story a thumbs up and share the story with your loved ones. Subscribe if you have not done so by now. Until I bring another story your way. Bye.